The world doesn't hate Jews. The world hates Israel. It's so crazy that we're 2 years into a genocide and we're still being hammered by propagandists pretending to believe that the world has just spontaneously started hating Israel for no reason in some inexplicable explosion of Jew hatred. U.S. registers most outbreaks of global anti-Semitism in August, reads a recent headline from Fox News. Report, anti-Semitism hits post-Holocaust high, blares a headline from Newsmax. Gen Z's casual anti-Semitism is growing, seeded by influencers like Tucker Carlson, says a headline from the New York Post. During a recent quote-unquote counterterrorism summit at Reichman University, Anti-Defamation League CEO Jonathan Greenblatt complained that the entire world is becoming increasingly hateful toward Jews. He said, "This year, ADL's Global 100 survey of anti-Semitic attitudes around the world found a 46% shift of the adult population, 2.2 billion people, harbor elevated levels of anti-Semitism. That's nearly double the rate that we saw a decade ago. For the first time since we started tracking these attitudes in the 1960s, the younger generation is more likely to hold elevated anti-Jewish views than their parents or grandparents." End quote. They're just talking about people who oppose Israel for perpetrating a live-streamed Holocaust. People don't hate Israel because it's full of Jewish people. They hate Israel because of the things Israel does. It is absolutely mind-boggling that to this day we're seeing a hyper-militaristic, apartheid, ethno-nationalist state starving and massacring civilians because of their ethnicity, bombing hospitals, assassinating journalists and medical professionals, murdering humanitarian workers, starting wars, invading neighboring countries, manipulating foreign governments, threatening activists, and actively working to crush free speech throughout the Western world, all with the backing of the most powerful empire in history. And we've still got Western institutions trying to convince us that people hate Israel because of religious prejudice. This is the same genocidal apartheid state that has been terrorizing activists for trying to bring formula to starving babies. The same genocidal apartheid state whose leader just appeared before the UN and announced that the victims of his genocide were being forced to listen to his speech because Israel had taken control of their phones. The same genocidal apartheid state whose leader is publicly boasting about having seized control of TikTok in order to manipulate the things Westerners are allowed to say to each other about Israeli atrocities. The same genocidal apartheid state whose leader is reportedly going around bragging that he owns the President of the United States and can make the U.S. do whatever he wants. For 2 years, we've been watching footage coming out of Gaza showing things being done to human anatomy that we hadn't seen depicted in even the goriest horror movies ever produced by Hollywood. Stories about rape, torture, people being mauled to death by dogs, suffering the likes of which we cannot even imagine over here in our sheltered little Western homes. And they're still trying to tell us that our revulsion toward the state that is doing these things is the result of anti-Semitism. If I was on a bus with a man who was constantly hurting the other passengers, abusing them, attacking them, and degrading them, I would think that man is an asshole. It wouldn't matter if he was wearing a Star of David, a cross, a turban, or a keffiyeh. I would think he is a dickhead regardless. If I looked out my window and saw people massacring children, I'd probably think thoughts like, "That's horrible, and how can I stop this?" The furthest thing from my mind would be thoughts like, "What religion are they?" Or, "Their religion is very relevant to any discussions we might have about this massacre." Or, "We should definitely be very careful about discussing this massacre because we don't want to offend people who have the same religion as the people doing the massacre." It would never occur to me to consider such things, much less that such considerations should be central to all discourse about the massacre for years on end. As someone from a Catholic family, I never once felt like I was being discriminated against when people said priests should stop molesting children. I never tried to claim a hate crime had been done to me whenever anyone said pedophilia is wrong. I saw that child rape at the hands of the church was a monstrous abuse, which urgently needed to end at all costs, and that this self-evident fact had nothing to do with discriminating against anyone based on their religion. There's a video going around showing anti-genocide protesters in South Korea throwing shoes at a large picture of Benjamin Netanyahu. These are people who've probably never met a Jew in their lives, for whom the Jewish faith has no cultural relevance whatsoever. They've probably spent close to zero time thinking about Jews and Judaism. They just hate Netanyahu because he's perpetrating an active genocide. Because duh. The world doesn't hate Jews. It hates Israel. The world hates Israel because Israel is a profoundly evil state whose profoundly evil actions are tormenting millions of people and are having a direct effect on our own lives to a greater and greater extent as well. Anyone who babbles about anti-Semitism in the year 2025 is just trying to shut you down and shut you up so you don't oppose the most nakedly evil thing that is happening in your world today.